The diner had always been a place of routine, where the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee lingered in the air, where regulars sat in the same booths every morning, and where the waitresses knew everyone by name. But on one chilly morning, something happened that would change the life of one quiet waitress forever. It started with a boy who never spoke, a boy whose eyes carried more pain than any child should ever have to bear. She noticed him first on a rainy Tuesday. He slipped inside the diner, soaked from head to toe, clutching a tattered backpack as though it was the only thing keeping him grounded. He didn't order anything. He just sat in the corner booth, staring at the menu as if reading it would fill his empty stomach. When she walked over, he whispered so softly she almost didn't hear him. "Just a glass of water, please." Her heart ached. She knew that look, hunger disguised as pride. She'd seen it in her own reflection once, years ago, when times were so hard she had to choose between paying rent or eating dinner. Without asking further questions, she went to the kitchen and slipped a plate of pancakes onto the counter. She carried it to his table, set it down gently and smiled. "This one's on the house." The boy's eyes widened, his lips parted as if he wanted to argue, but instead he lowered his gaze and began to eat. He didn't say thank you, but she didn't need him to. The gratitude was written all over his trembling hands as he clutched the fork. From that day on, he came back, always quiet, always alone, always with that same tired look in his eyes. She never charged him. Instead, she found ways to make it look like it was just another order from the kitchen, slipping the food onto a ticket and covering it herself at the end of her shift. Sometimes it was pancakes, sometimes a sandwich, sometimes just soup with extra bread. And always, she'd leave a cookie on the plate, because every child deserves something sweet. She never asked where he came from. She never pried into his life. She knew enough to see that he needed help, and she had been taught by life itself that sometimes kindness without questions is the greatest gift of all. Weeks turned into months. The boy grew a little taller, a little stronger. He still rarely spoke, but sometimes, just sometimes, she'd catch the smallest smile flicker across his lips when she set down his food. That was enough to keep her going on the hardest days. And then one morning, everything changed. The diner was unusually quiet. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence as she wiped down tables. The boy sat in his usual spot, staring out the window as if waiting for something. And that's when she heard it, the low, steady rumble of engines outside. 4 black SUVs pulled up at once, their tinted windows glinting in the sunlight. Doors swung open, and out stepped men in suits, earpieces coiled behind their ears, scanning the area with sharp, practiced eyes. The diner fell silent. Forks clinked onto plates, conversations died mid-sentence, and every head turned toward the door. The waitress froze, rag still in her hand. Her heart pounded. Who were these people? Why here? Why now? The boy didn't move. He just sat there, as if he knew this moment was coming. Then the diner door swung open, and a tall man in a dark suit entered. His presence filled the room, commanding, authoritative, yet strangely gentle. His eyes swept the diner before landing on the boy. "Son," he said softly. The boy's fork clattered to the table. His lips trembled. For the first time in months, his voice broke the silence. "Dad?" The waitress felt her knees weaken. The suited man strode across the diner, knelt by the boy, and pulled him into a tight embrace. The boy buried his face in his father's chest, sobbing silently, clutching the man's jacket as if afraid he might disappear again. The diner buzzed with whispers. Who were they? Why the SUVs? Why did this boy, who looked so small and fragile, have a father who arrived with such a presence? The man finally stood, his hand resting on his son's shoulder. He turned to the waitress, his eyes locking onto hers with a weight that made her throat tighten. "You've been feeding my son," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. She swallowed hard, unsure what to say. He looked hungry. That's all. The man's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought she'd done something wrong. But then his expression softened, and his eyes shimmered with something she hadn't expected. Gratitude. "You don't know what you've done," he whispered. "You kept him alive. You gave him hope when I couldn't." Confusion swirled through her, but before she could respond, another man in a suit leaned in, and murmured something to the father. The father nodded, then turned back to her. "I can't tell you everything," he said, his voice low but steady. "But know this, my family owes you a debt we can never repay." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it gently on the counter. Then he took his son's hand, and together they walked out of the diner, surrounded by the protective wall of black-suited men. The SUVs started their engines and rolled away, leaving the diner in stunned silence. The waitress stood frozen, staring at the door as if it might swing open again. Slowly, with trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a simple note, written in neat handwriting. "Thank you for saving my son. General David Collins, U.S. Army." Beneath the note was a check. She gasped, her eyes widening as she read the amount. Enough to cover her debts, enough to repair her aging car, enough to give her a chance at a life she thought she'd never have. Tears blurred her vision as she pressed the note to her chest. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the boy's smile, the memory of his first real meal, the knowledge that kindness, small, quiet, unnoticed kindness, had changed everything. The diner slowly returned to life. Conversations picked up again, but the air felt different, heavier with meaning. Regulars leaned in, whispering to each other about what they had just witnessed. Some wiped at their eyes, others stared into their coffee cups, lost in thought. That night, as the waitress closed up the diner, she sat alone in the corner booth where the boy used to sit. She thought about all the times she had struggled, all the times life had felt unbearably heavy, and she realized something profound. It isn't grand gestures that change the world. It isn't power or wealth or fame. It's the quiet acts of compassion, the ones no one sees, that ripple out into something far greater than we can ever imagine. She whispered into the empty diner, as though speaking to the boy who had vanished with the SUVs. "Thank you for reminding me what kindness really means." And that is the moral of the story. Sometimes the smallest kindness can have the greatest impact. A meal, a smile, a gesture of love. It can save a life. It can heal a wound. It can bridge a gap no words could ever fill. So the next time you see someone in need, remember this story. You never know who they are, what battles they're fighting, or how much your kindness might mean. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, real-life stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. And in the comments, tell us, when was the last time someone's small act of kindness changed your life? Because sometimes the quietest gestures speak the loudest truths.